Kurt Busch, domestic violence allegations and other incidents. Kurt Busch, a former NASCAR Cup Series champion, became embroiled in a high-profile domestic violence allegation in late 2014. His ex-girlfriend, Patricia Driscoll, accused him of assaulting her at Dover International Speedway in September of 2014. In February 2015, a Delaware family court commissioner issued an opinion finding it was more likely than not that Busch had committed an act of domestic violence, leading NASCAR to suspend him indefinitely just before the Daytona 500. Busch denied the accusations, and the case never resulted in criminal charges. In March 2015, though, Delaware prosecutors announced that they would not file charges against Busch, citing insufficient evidence to meet the high burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Busch expressed relief at this decision, maintaining his innocence and calling the situation a nightmare. He agreed to comply with NASCAR's reinstatement program, which included evaluation and counseling, and he was eventually reinstated after completing those requirements. Notably, Busch's defense made sensational claims, including alleging Driscoll was a trained mercenary assassin, which Driscoll vehemently denied. Driscoll obtained a no-contact order in family court, but she lamented that Busch not being prosecuted made the protective order that much more important as her only recourse. The domestic violence allegations and ensuing suspension marked one of the most serious off-track incidents in Busch's career, and NASCAR's swift action reflected a broader toughening stance on domestic abuse in sports at the time. Beyond the 2014 and 15 domestic violence case, though, Kurt Busch had a reputation for volatility and aggression both on and off the track. Early on in his career, he was involved in numerous altercations and controversies. For example, in November of 2005, shortly after winning the Cup Championship, Busch was cited for reckless driving near Phoenix International Raceway. During that incident, officers reported that he was argumentative and uncooperative, including allegedly saying deputies were targeting him for being a Jeff Gordon fan. And although preliminary testing indicated his BAC was under the legal DUI limit, his team, Roush Racing, suspended him for the final 2 races of 2005. Busch later pled guilty to reduced traffic offenses, speeding and following too closely, as part of a plea deal that effectively mitigated the original reckless driving accusation. The Phoenix episode led team owner Jack Roush to release Busch, illustrating how Busch's behavior had career consequences. Additionally, Busch had well-documented run-ins with fellow drivers and media. In 2012, Busch verbally lashed out at reporter Bob Pockris, saying he was frustrated by stupid questions. NASCAR fined him for verbal misconduct. He was also fined for a pit road incident involving Ryan Newman's crew in 2012, and other public confrontations with fellow drivers contributed to his reputation for volatility. These episodes underscore Busch's long history of anger management issues, which saw him penalized multiple times by teams and by NASCAR. Despite efforts, though, to rehabilitate his image in anger management counseling, Busch's penchant for confrontation made him one of NASCAR's more controversial figures of the 2000s and 2010s. In recent years, though, Kurt Busch managed to steer clear of any major behavioral incidents until another serious off-track issue arose in 2024. Now semi-retired from full-time racing, Busch was arrested in August 2024 for a DWI, driving while impaired, in Iredell County, North Carolina. Police pulled him over late at night for speeding in a 45-mile-an-hour zone, reported he was going around 60, and observed signs of impairment. A roadside sobriety test and breathalyzer indicated Busch's blood alcohol content was 0.17, over twice the legal limit for North Carolina. He was taken into custody and charged with DWI and additionally cited for speeding and reckless driving. Busch was released on bond with a court date set for September 19, 2024. The 45-year-old veteran publicly expressed disappointment in himself for this lapse in judgment, as it came after a long career and following his 2023 retirement from full-time competition. The DWI arrest led to legal consequences and a renewed public scrutiny of Busch's behavior. NASCAR indicated no additional sanctions would be imposed, since he was technically no longer under the governing body's active driver status at the time. Cody Ware, domestic violence charges and legal resolution, 2023. Cody Ware, a NASCAR Cup Series driver for Rick Ware Racing, was arrested in April 2023 on some serious domestic violence-related charges. The Iredell County Sheriff's Office in North Carolina charged Ware with felony assault by strangulation inflicting serious injury and a misdemeanor count of assault on a female stemming from an alleged incident on April 3, 2023. According to the arrest warrant and police reports later made public, Ware was accused of a brutal attack on his then-girlfriend. The warrant claimed that he pushed her to the floor, slapped her, wrapped his hands around her neck, threw a phone at her, and then threatened to kill her, resulting in the woman having redness on her neck, soreness, and a broken hand. Ware did not compete in the NASCAR event the weekend following the incident. The team announced that he was stepping away for a personal matter before news about the arrest broke. But once the arrest became public, NASCAR took swift action under its behavioral policy, and on April 10, 2023, NASCAR suspended Cody Ware indefinitely due to the nature of the charges, as is standard when a driver is charged with a violent felony. The suspension meant Ware was barred from all NASCAR events and activities pending resolution of the case. At the time, this case drew significant attention as it came amid increased focus on domestic violence issues in motorsports. The allegations against Ware were vehemently disputed by him and his family, and the case took several twists. Cody Ware, 27, maintained his innocence from the start, and his defense pointed to a different narrative of the April 3rd altercation. Notably though, in September 2023, the situation escalated when Ware's now ex-girlfriend herself was arrested and charged with simple assault, with warrants alleging that she had repeatedly hit Cody Ware in the face and head, supposedly causing her own hand injury. Furthermore, Cody's father, team owner Rick Ware, took the unusual step of filing civil lawsuits in November 2023 against the ex-girlfriend on behalf of both the team and himself. Those suits claim that the woman made false and malicious statements to police with the intent to damage Cody's racing career and the team's business. The civil filings even alleged that a trivial dispute over Ware not wearing sparked the team state lost significant sponsorships, over $3.5 million, and incurred costs replacing Cody as driver due to the arrest. These moves by the Ware family suggest that they viewed the incident as a possible setup or exaggeration, essentially a claim that the accusations were unfounded, a stance that some observers labeled as the Wares promoting a kind of conspiracy against them, though no independent evidence of such a plot ever emerged. Throughout this period, Cody Ware himself stayed mostly out of the public eye, aside from issuing a brief statement asserting his innocence and expressing confidence that the truth would come out. In December of 2023, the legal case reached its conclusion without a trial. On December 7th, prosecutors dropped all charges against both Cody Ware and his ex-girlfriend. According to the Iredell County District Attorney's Office, both parties declined to cooperate and chose not to testify, which made it impossible to proceed with any criminal prosecution. With neither side willing to take the stand, the DA dismissed the assault charges, in the interest of justice, effectively ending the case. 4 days later, NASCAR announced it was reinstating Cody Ware to competition, ending his 8-month suspension. In a public statement upon reinstatement, Ware said, "I've maintained my innocence from the very beginning. I'm glad this entire matter is behind me because it's been an incredibly difficult 8 months." He expressed gratitude that all of the allegations were dismissed and said that he was thankful to have his life back. Despite regaining eligibility, Ware didn't immediately return to the Cup Series in 2024. His team had already filled his seat, and his future in top-level NASCAR remained uncertain. This case highlighted NASCAR's firm approach to domestic violence allegations, suspending first and investigating later, and showed how complex such situations can become when counter-accusations and legal maneuvering come into play. In the end, with charges dropped though, no definitive legal determination of guilt or innocence was made, leaving many questions unanswered. NASCAR's handling, suspending Ware until the case was resolved and then quickly reinstating him once it was dismissed, was seen as consistent with its policy of taking alleged domestic violence seriously while ultimately allowing due process to play out. Greg Gaulding, domestic violence arrest, NASCAR suspension and dismissal, 2024. Greg Gaulding, a part-time NASCAR driver, faced a domestic violence charge in 2024 that resulted in an indefinite suspension, but was ultimately resolved in his favor. On April 2, 2024, Gaulding was arrested in Cornelius, North Carolina, Mecklenburg County, and charged with a misdemeanor count of domestic violence, often listed legally as a crime of domestic violence, following an incident that morning. Only minimal details of the alleged domestic dispute were published initially. As is standard, the misdemeanor domestic violence charge immediately drew NASCAR's attention. The day after the arrest, NASCAR officials announced that Gaulding was suspended indefinitely from all NASCAR competition, citing the charges under the sports conduct rules. At the time of his suspension, Gaulding didn't have a full-time ride. He was a part-time competitor with 158 starts across NASCAR's top 3 series since 2014. Still, the suspension meant that he couldn't participate in any events until the issue was resolved and NASCAR approved his return. NASCAR's quick suspension of Gaulding reflected the league's zero-tolerance approach. Their rulebook permits indefinite suspensions for any member charged with significant criminal violations like domestic violence. Gaulding was released that same day on a written promise to appear, and initially made no public statements as the legal process unfolded. The arrest and suspension were notable as Gaulding had been known as a young driver trying to rebuild his career, and this incident put those plans on hold. Over the next several months, Gaulding's case quietly moved through the legal system. By late July 2024, the domestic violence charge against Greg Gaulding was dropped and the case was dismissed by the Mecklenburg County District Attorney's Office. On July 25th, prosecutors decided not to pursue the misdemeanor charge, resulting in a dismissal of the case. The exact reasons weren't fully detailed in public records, but that often implies insufficient evidence or other factors that made prosecution untenable. Gaulding's representatives released a statement on social media calling the outcome a just outcome to an unjust situation, indicating that they felt Gaulding had been wrongfully accused to begin with. "We expected this case to be dismissed once all the facts came to light," the statement read, expressing relief that after months of uncertainty, Gaulding's name was cleared. They thanked the public for withholding judgment and suggested the facts didn't support the charge, hence the dismissal being the just outcome. Observers noted that this language strongly implied Gaulding maintained his innocence and viewed the arrest as unwarranted. With the legal case closed, attention turned back to NASCAR. Once charges are dismissed, drivers generally may petition for reinstatement after satisfying any conditions NASCAR sets, such as evaluations or counseling. In Gaulding's case, NASCAR had not immediately announced a reinstatement as of the dismissal date. However, given the charge was cleared, it was expected he could be reinstated after petitioning NASCAR and meeting any standard conditions for suspended members. Gaulding, 26, expressed a desire to move on and resume his racing career. No further details of the April incident were ever publicized, and no other party was named, so the situation remains somewhat private. Fans and media saw parallels to other cases where accusations didn't lead to convictions, raising discussions about how careers can be impacted even by allegations. In Gaulding's scenario, the quick suspension and later quiet dismissal underscore the delicate balance that NASCAR tries to maintain, acting decisively in the face of a serious allegation, yet willing to reinstate a driver once cleared. By September 2025, Gaulding's NASCAR status remained technically suspended pending formal reinstatement, but with his legal record cleared, there were no further disciplinary or legal actions against him. The episode ended with Gaulding's name legally cleared, even as it briefly stalled the momentum of his racing career. Carson Ware, assault arrest and NASCAR suspension, 2021. Carson Ware, a young NASCAR Xfinity Series driver, was involved in a domestic-related incident in 2021 that led to criminal charges and a NASCAR suspension, though he was later reinstated. Carson Ware, the son of team owner Rick Ware and brother of Cup driver Cody Ware, was arrested on October 21, 2021 in Rowan County, North Carolina. He was charged with assault on a female, simple assault, and damage to personal property after an alleged domestic altercation at a residence. According to county records, Ware, then 21 years old, was taken into custody and given a $1,000 secured bond on those misdemeanor charges. In response to the arrest, his team at the time, SS Greenlight Racing, immediately suspended Carson Ware from driving duties, and NASCAR indefinitely suspended him as well that same day. Rick Ware Racing, run by his father, though Carson was driving for a different team on loan, put out a statement expressing disappointment and emphasizing that such behavior was taken very seriously. Rick Ware lamented the situation, apologizing to the affected team, SS Greenlight's owner Bobby Dotter, and saying that he hoped Carson would get the help that he needed. This swift action meant that Carson didn't compete in the scheduled Xfinity race that weekend. He was replaced in the car and was barred from all NASCAR events pending the outcomes of the case. The charges, while misdemeanors, fell under NASCAR's strict behavioral policy regarding domestic violence and personal conduct. It's notable that NASCAR's policy doesn't wait for a conviction. An arrest on such charges is enough to trigger suspension to protect the sport's integrity and safety. Following his suspension, Carson Ware's case proceeded through the legal system, though details weren't heavily reported in national media given his lower profile status. By mid-2022, the situation had significantly changed. On June 7, 2022, NASCAR officially reinstated Carson Ware after roughly 8 months of suspension. The sanctioning body announced that Ware had successfully completed the terms of a behavioral penalty and was restored to good standing as a NASCAR member. This reinstatement implies that either the legal case was resolved or Ware fulfilled NASCAR's requirements, such as counseling, community service, or other remedies often mandated in such situations. Indeed, reports indicated that Ware's NASCAR membership privileges were restored after a review of the incident under the NASCAR's rulebook members' conducted guidelines. Those guidelines allow reinstatement if a suspended individual satisfies whatever condition NASCAR sets, regardless of court outcome. It wasn't publicly detailed whether the charges were dropped, reduced, or if Ware entered a plea, but no significant jail time was ever reported, suggesting the matter may have been settled or adjudicated as a misdemeanor with a minor penalty or diversion program. After reinstatement, Carson Ware was theoretically eligible to resume racing. However, his career had been disrupted. Prior to the incident, he had made only a handful of Xfinity Series starts, just 9 in total over 2020 and 2021. Post-suspension, he didn't return to any prominent NASCAR rides. The 22-year-old's brush with the law and the ensuing suspension likely impacted his opportunities, and as of 2025, he has not been a regular driver in any national series. Carson Ware's case illustrates NASCAR's consistent approach to domestic assault allegations: immediate suspension followed by conditional reinstatement, even for less-known drivers. While the incident didn't garner the same headlines as higher-profile cases, it was a serious matter for those involved. Carson's relatively quick reinstatement within the next season suggests that whatever the outcome, he complied with all the requirements and put the episode behind him. Nonetheless, the stigma of the arrest may have lingered, and he has kept a low profile ever since. This case also gained attention because it occurred in the same family as Cody Ware's later case, placing the Ware family under some pretty difficult scrutiny over multiple such events. Eric McClure, domestic violence charge and legal outcome, 2018. Eric McClure, the former NASCAR Xfinity Series driver, was involved in a domestic violence case back in 2018 that concluded with a plea deal after protracted legal proceedings. McClure, who had stepped back from full-time driving, was arrested in February 2018 in Virginia after a reported altercation with his then-wife, Miranda McClure. Police reports said that McClure allegedly choked and struck Miranda in the presence of their children. A child placed a 911 call and officers reported seeing marks consistent with a handprint on Miranda's face. The case moved quickly at first. He was initially found guilty in a lower court in 2018 on a misdemeanor domestic assault charge, a decision that was later contested and followed by extended appeals and continuances. McClure appealed the conviction and maintained a plea of not guilty, keeping the case active in the legal system. The case went through many continuances and delays. His state attorney, Del Jeff Campbell, repeatedly invoked a state law privilege that allows lawyer legislators to obtain trial delays when the legislation is in session. By using this privilege, McClure's team managed to postpone the appeals trial numerous times. At least 9 continuances were recorded, stretching the case out over more than 2 years. This drew criticism from McClure's estranged wife, who accused the attorney of abusing his legislative position to drag out the criminal case and wear her down emotionally. The domestic case became entangled within the couple's contentious divorce, adding to the complexity and tension. Throughout, McClure didn't publicly comment, but these delays and maneuvers were seen by some as a tactic to avoid a lessened consequence. In October 2020, McClure pleaded no contest to a misdemeanor domestic violence charge as part of an agreement. He received a deferred disposition that included 12 months probation, substance abuse counseling in order to undergo a mental health evaluation and any recommended treatment. The no contest plea and deferred adjudication meant that if McClure complied with all the conditions, the charge would potentially be dismissed after the probation period, a common outcome in first-time misdemeanor cases. The lengthy delay in reaching this outcome was noted in media reports. News outlets, including the Associated Press, noted the case had been long delayed by repeated continuances and scheduling maneuvers. For Miranda McClure, the result was mixed. She expressed relief that there was finally some accountability, but frustration remained that justice took so long. She also pointed out that a protective order from family court was crucial during the wait, calling it the only protection the victim will get in such drawn-out cases. This comment was from a related case, illustrating the importance of protective orders even when criminal punishment is limited. There were no widespread conspiracy theories surrounding the case, but the usual legal delays led some to question the fairness of allowing a defendant's political connections to influence timing. The Virginia State Bar was even asked to review the lawyer's conduct, reflecting how contentious the process became. Tragically, the aftermath of the case took a somber turn unrelated to the legal outcome. On May 2, 2021, Eric McClure would die at the age of 42. His family announced his passing, which came about 6 months after his probation deal was in place. No official cause of death was released publicly, though McClure had well-documented health struggles in the years prior, including concussions and lingering effects from racing accidents. His death meant that he never had a chance to fully rebuild his life or public image following the domestic violence case. At the time of his passing, he was surviving on probation and had largely stayed out of the spotlight, other than the occasional social media posts. McClure's legacy in NASCAR is that of a journeyman driver, nearly 300 Xfinity Series starts, and later a team owner, but it's inevitably clouded by the domestic violence incident back in 2018. Did you know about any of these cases? We unravel more such stories and cases every single day, so be sure to subscribe to the NASCAR's Explainer for more interesting NASCAR content on your feed every single day.